Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Saga, where we explore all of those expanded stories beyond the Skywalker saga. I am David Cottingham, along with Hannah Burr. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I know it's been a little bit since we've done a show together. We got a lot going on, but we are knocking out a few stories consecutively here, but the first one we are going to tackle right now is one that we did a few weeks ago. It's the second book in the Aftermath series called Life Debt. Of course, written by Chuck Wendig. I got the book right here. These are really good covers, by the way.
They really are.
Right? And of course, you see the Millennium Falcon there, meaning there's a couple people that you're probably expecting to be in this book. But yeah, we're going to dive into that book right now. And it's an older book. You know, it's been out for about 5 years now. It was published on July 12th, 2016. So almost 5 years ago. And, you know, as we talked about in with the first book, you know, it takes place right after episode 6, and it's basically the lead up to the final battle up between the Empire and the Rebellion at the Battle of Jakku. You know, in the first book, Aftermath, we kind of get introduced to these new characters, this new rebel or this new Republic group now that's going out and chasing after the remnants of the Empire led by Norra Wexley. And this book continues that, as well as dives into a bunch of different storylines. So a lot going on in this book. Hannah, your overall review of Life Debt.
First off, it's not easy to give a synopsis of this book.
No.
Or a summary, rather. Or summary, synopsis, whatever word you want to use. It's not easy. So essentially, part of the group is going to rescue Han and Chewie while trying to liberate Kashyyyk. And then in the background, you have the First Order emerging and coming to life.
Right.
With Gallius Rex and Sloane.
Yep.
I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yes. So, I mean, what do you think about it compared to the first book, though?
To me, I like the first book better. And I know before we started recording, you and I had a good discussion about this. But for me, there's a lot happening. And when you're reading it and you're trying to keep track of what's going on when, it just becomes very difficult because there are so many factors. There are so many things going on. So to me, I did not like it as much as the first Aftermath book, just because it was a little more confusing for me. I had to go on Wikipedia and reread the summary a couple of times to fully understand what was going on at all times. What were your thoughts? Initial thoughts about the book?
You know, of course, I listened to the books, and you made a good point, probably, that it's probably a lot more enjoyable listening to it because there is so much action going on, and there's so much adventure and excitement going on. I mean, it's a nonstop, book from the beginning to end. I feel like the first book took a little while to get going. I feel like this one it takes off right from the beginning. I mean, you know, Han and Chewie are missing, and they got to try to find them, as well as, you know, save Chewbacca's home planet. And so I really enjoyed the book more just because I felt like it was easier to listen to and easier to, you know, and I was ultimately what I was drawn in the most by really was actually the Gallius Rex Sloane side of the storyline.
Yes.
Because like you said, you know, this new character, Gallius Rex, has been technically mentored by Palpatine. He's known Palpatine since he was a little boy, has worked his way up through the Navy, the Imperial Navy, and now he's basically tasked with trying to, keep the Empire alive. Not alive, but to rebuild the Empire. Very much like you said. And by hiding, obviously we know in the unknown regions, to really build up this military might again. And of course, we're introduced to General Hux's father, Brendel Hux, in this as well.
Yes.
For many of you may know throughout the stories that are out there, he's the reason why they reverted to recruiting babies basically to train them as stormtroopers, which is what we see in the First Order. So, yeah, there's all these little seeds that basically become what the First Order is. And maybe that was the thing about what's intriguing now as you look back 5 years, because obviously this book came out in 2016. This is before Episode 8 came out, and of course Episode 9. So now it's interesting to look back and think, okay, well, was this truly the plan the whole time? If the Emperor was going to die, was this always the plan that Gallia Syrax would take the fleet into the Unknown Regions and start building the First Order? And I got to start to believe that ultimately was the plan because of what we saw in Episode 9, which, the First Order kept the First Order was built until Palpatine was able to clone himself, fully come back, and then of course he was going to execute the final order, which was to basically punish the entire galaxy. But so that part really interests, again, listening to it back then, I didn't know what was going to happen with the sequel movies. But now that I do, looking back and rereading and like you said, redoing the summary and kind of refreshing my memory, it's like, wow, there was a lot. It actually makes me want to go back and listen to the whole thing again, to be honest.
That doesn't surprise me at all, especially just in the book, you see so much of the relationship between Palpatine and Rax. You just see that relationship grow, and you understand how between the lines, you see how close they really were. So right. I personally, for me, I think it's very safe to assume that Palpatine shared with him his plan. I think it's very safe to assume that. So with that in mind, it's just mind-blowing for me to learn more and more about how intricate Palpatine's plan was.
Mm-hmm.
And how well thought out it was, and how he had a backup plan after backup plan after backup plan. It kind of hurts your brain to even begin to think about how he would consider all of this in the first place.
Right. Yeah, because you technically would need a lot of resources and a lot of people to pull something like this off, but he did it basically, all by himself.
He did it all by himself. He came up with a plan by himself, and sure, I'm sure he probably made parts of it up as he went along, but
yeah, and we've talked about it, I think, either in this show or another show, but he basically manipulated everybody into doing what he wanted without them knowing they were doing what he wanted. The whole Clone Wars was fake. It was set up. Now the rebellion, obviously, he didn't anticipate a rebellion, and of course, he didn't anticipate Vader's kids being a part of that. But like you said, he had a contingency plan if for some reason he was going to be dethroned, and that was the First Order and Snoke, and cloning, and all this stuff. And he had Star Destroyers that all had planet-killing, weapons on them. He was there. But, unfortunately, the Jedi came through.
Oh, yeah.
But speaking... Yeah.
So I just wanted to say the book just emphasizes his part in the background.
Yes, agreed. So you do get a good look at the Empire and what's happening there, and this is truly leading up to the Battle of Jakku.
Yes.
The group that we're used to from the first book, Norra Wexley and Sinjir and Jazz, Amari, and great characters, really good to follow here. But we also get the New Republic side as well a little bit. A lot of Mothma in this, a lot of Leia. Them trying to establish the government again, and stuff like that. So it's a good next step into seeing how, it's just a good reminder that after Return of the Jedi, it's not as simple as it looked, where, oh, we're celebrating, Emperor's dead, the Death Star is destroyed, everything's back to normal now. No, there's chaos all over the galaxy. And there's still, planets like Chewbacca's planet, Kashyyyk, is still being held captive, even though the Emperor's dead, and so there is still a battle that has to be waged in order to free them. So, it's interesting because you tell these stories with these 3 books to really close out the Civil War. But it's just amazing because there's a lot of fans that don't read these books that still kind of have their mind wrapped around that the Return of the Jedi was the end of the war.
Yeah, there's no way that was the end of the war. I mean, I still love in the first Aftermath book where the father looks at his son and says, "No, it's not over. It's just begun." And I think going back to your comment about how we don't realize how complicated and messy and chaotic everything was, I almost wonder if that was the purpose of this book. To have everything going on at the same time, to have all these different plot lines just all over the place. Well, all over the place, but organized still.
Right.
They tell a cohesive story. It just communicates, there's a lot going on. There are a lot of different people involved with this. There are a lot of different messes that still need to be figured out. And then it will come to its conclusion with the Battle of Jakku. So I almost wonder if that was the purpose of this book. The purpose of the first book is saying, okay, we're slowly revving up. This isn't over. Second book is, this is all the chaos going on. Third book is, this is how it all ends.
That sounds right. I mean, that does sound right. I mean, you can kind of look at it almost like the original trilogy, right? I mean, the first movie was setting up the rebels and Luke and Leia and Han, and then Empire was kind of all over the place. You had the bounty hunters, you had Han and the trying to escape through the asteroid field, you had Luke going to get training, and then you had Cloud City. I mean, you had all this stuff going on, and then of course the resolution with the Return of the Jedi. So that's true. I mean, the middle book, usually the middle part of the trilogy is always usually the most dire for your heroes and the most complicated for your heroes, and your antagonists usually feel like they have the upper hand, and that's very much what's happening here. I think there's a lot. I mean, but there's a lot, even more so, like you said, there's a lot going on in this.
I mean, complicated is the right word. Not to give too much away, but our heroes, especially Tenon, he experienced, and Nora, they experienced a great complication.
Correct. Yes. Now speaking, we did mention Jedi, and one thing I don't believe we talked about in the first book, but of course, and some of you watching or listening may be asking or thinking about this, but where's Luke in all this?
Right?
So again, is the decision to leave him out of this, was that a Lucasfilm decision because they had plans for him possibly doing something else? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. There obviously is a mention of Leia's pregnancy in this. Mm-hmm. So, because we know that Ben is born shortly after the Battle of Jakku. So, but no Luke Skywalker, no Jedi involved in these books.
I was about to ask you that question about what do you think Luke is doing at this point? Because it does seem very weird to keep him out of all of this. You would think he'd be on the front lines. Maybe.
Yeah. You would think so. And all we know, at least all I have read or heard, is that he's trying to find answers, like how to start this new academy. He's trying to go around, look for new relics. If you remember, have you played the Battlefront game? Battlefront?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. It's on my list of things to play.
Yes, because we could do that storyline too.
Oh, we will.
But, to get you excited for it, there is a part of the game when you're doing the campaign, because that takes place shortly after Return of the Jedi as well, and the Battle of Jakku is part of that game. But there's a part in it where you actually play as Luke, and you go searching. You're searching for finding one of Palpatine's old bunkers and finding some artifacts in there, and he runs into a couple of the guys from Inferno Squad. So again, he's probably out there doing that thing, but why wouldn't Leia call him and say, come fight with us?
I got it. It makes no sense to me. No sense, but
yeah, and then it comes back. It's interesting because I guess, and I probably should know the answer to this, but maybe I don't. When we see them, when he talks about training Leia in The Rise of Skywalker, and there's that scene where they shows them training. Was that after Ben was born? I think it was after Ben was born, right?
I think it was, because it was specifically she had a vision of her son.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe it was she had Ben, decided to train as a Jedi so that she could better train Ben, then realized, this is the path he's on. It would be better if he just stuck with Luke, because he's a better Jedi than I would ever be.
Yeah, so that was after the Battle of Jakku, so yes. Luke must have found some things that he was looking for and was ready to train her, and still not start an academy yet. But he was training Leia. So anyway, interesting. Okay, so overall, I don't know. I think to wrap this up, the point is that it's definitely a setup for the third book. Mm-hmm. Cover shortly, Empire's End, and a lot to do with the Battle of Jakku, but a lot of answers that do come up with the questions in this book, and it's even better. I feel like and I'll talk about that, but I feel like Empire's End is even better. But what is I don't know, final thoughts and your rating on this thing?
So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Reason being is just, for me, there was just too much going on. I feel like it would have benefited if we had a part 1 and part 2, not necessarily splitting the book in half, but having part 1 be the point of view of about half the cast, and then part 2 being the point of view of the story from the other half of the cast, and then you have them intersect at points. Mm-hmm. So it just is easier to keep track. But once again, I read it. I didn't hear the audiobook, so that's just my experience. But it is jam-packed full of action. It still tells a great story. There are memorable characters. There are new characters. Okay. There are new questions coming up. Gaps in the movie sagas that are filled. So it still plays a huge purpose in the universe and in the Skywalker saga story. Personally, not my favorite.
Interesting. I was trying to look up if we rated the first book, but you, I think if we reveal now, I think you said you probably give a 3.5, right? The first book,
3.5 or 4.
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'd probably be the opposite. I would probably give the first book. I would look back and then say that was a 3. I would say this is a 3.5. I think it's a step up, and just because I know where it's going, and I know Empire's End was even better, so Empire's End is probably going to get a 4 from me. But interesting. I'll be curious to see what your thoughts on that book would be. But yeah, I think it was a good follow up, and I think it was also we didn't even mention there's still those little vignettes that are dropped in, right?
I love those vignettes. I know that they seem random, but I love them so much because some of them do play a part. It's like, oh yeah, that's what happened to so and so. I love it personally.
Yes. Yeah, one is another continuation of what we mentioned in the first book, which is Cobb Vanth.
Yes,
is mentioned in this too again. So lots of good stuff there. Lots of good. I mean, it is a packed, just a full filled stories and excitement and action. It's a dense book.
Yes.
So go go listen or read Aftermath Life Debt from Chuck Wendig, and then come back and look for the third book, Empire's End, when we talk about that here in the coming weeks. Got to give Hannah some time to read, because you actually have not read it at all yet, right?
I still need to read it.
No, that's great, though. That's great.
You're holding it up, so I'm excited to get started on that.
Yes, if I had time, I'd go back and re-listen to it, which I may. I need to go back. I do want to listen to these books again, because again, a lot has happened since I did it last time. So the perception of these books is definitely different with what we know now with everything. So, all right. Well, go to InsideTheForce.com or our YouTube channel to get more Beyond the Sagas, as well as our other shows, our weekly show, as well in council sessions and Masters of the Order, and all the things that we could find there. Thanks, everybody. Of course, you can get us on all the podcast feeds or subscribe on YouTube. As always, I appreciate Hannah. Thank you for joining me on this series.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate you and this opportunity.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. See you next time. Take care. May the Force be with you.